Hey, wait, commenters, I see you. I see you. If you were just about to comment asking either when I'm going to update the Glitchtale timeline or why I'm continuing to talk about this series after some recent things that happened in the community, I already answered both of those things at the beginning of my Hate Origins Part 1 reaction video, and I don't feel like repeating myself. So this is the last time I will be mentioning either of these things, barring any significant developments in either area. And so until that point, I will be deleting any comments asking about either of those things on this and any future video. Hi, future Phil here, or slightly more recent past Phil, I guess. Anyway, so all of this video was, completely written and recorded and partially edited before the most recent drama in the Glitchtale community. So I just want to say that the deleting comments thing does still apply, and the reason for that is not to try to sweep this under the rug and pretend it never happened. It's just because I find a public comment section to not be the most fruitful place for a good discussion. So if you really feel like you need to contact me and tell me that I shouldn't have posted this video or something, there are links to places that you can contact me in the description. Hopefully a one-on-one discussion will end up being a better experience for everyone than just talking about it in the comments. And if this is somehow your first time hearing about this and you do want to be a part of the Glitchtale community, or just even you want to watch it going forward, I would suggest that you look into it yourself so you can make an informed decision about that. Oh, and if there's any sort of illusion that me making this video first is somehow me taking sides or anything ridiculous like that, first of all, like I said, I've started making this before a lot of this most recent stuff happened. And second, next video is going to be on Underverse. Cool? Cool. Thank you for understanding, and on with the video. I'm back! And I figured, hey, what better way to start off what is hopefully a new era for my channel than to talk about the series that got my channel off the ground in the first place, Glitchtale. If anyone clicked on this video for some reason without already knowing what Glitchtale is, this is an animated series on YouTube made by Camila Cuevas based on the video game Undertale. And today I will be ranking every single episode and prequel animatic in the entire series. Please keep in mind as I talk about these things that I love this series, and any criticism I give it comes from that place of love and is in no way meant to discount all the hard work that went into making these episodes, because I know how long it takes to make something like this. I did do a simple unedited tier list video similar to this a while ago, a few years ago or something, but more episodes have come out since then and my opinions have changed a bit too. Alright, now let's get on with the ranking. Spoilers will be everywhere, you have been warned.
On a scale of 1 to 10, it's not good.
Look, even the worst episode of Glitchtale is really not even bad. Yet Darker still has a pretty cool fight scene with Gaster. The good Season 1 vibes are all there. The main thing that puts this episode into last place is that in the grand scheme of the whole series, even in the grand scheme of the first season really, these events just seem very inconsequential. Its events are really only ever mentioned once after this point, and even then it's hardly anything. I guess maybe twice if you're being super specific about it. But still, it's hardly anything. You could pretty much completely take out this episode and the narrative of the whole series wouldn't really change at all. But it's super short and doesn't overstay its welcome anyways, so it's inoffensive at worst. Oh, and I forgot to mention that I won't really be taking the art quality of each episode into account in this ranking because, well, that would make this list a lot more boring.
We are best friends.
You are right. Ha 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 ha.
And here's another episode without a whole lot of substance. Although, unlike Yet Darker, your best friend is 100% integral to the plot. Gaster gets brought back, we're introduced to hate, among a few other things. But in my opinion, this episode mostly just boils down to the least cool Season 1 fight against Kara. Photoshop Flowey makes his first and only appearance, and doesn't do very much. Sans uses his real special attack, and it's just a whole bunch of Gaster blasters. Wow. Though, I gotta say, I do really like the ending. That remix of his theme gives me chills every time. It's really good.
You didn't see that coming.
If there's one of Glitchtale's many strengths that was present from the very beginning, it's the well-choreographed, emotionally charged fight scenes. In fact, I'd say that this is the main thing that the two episodes below this don't do quite as well, or at least the emotionally charged part. But for being essentially just a Sans fight AMV for most of it, that is what really makes Megalomaniac stand out. Well, that and the surprise twist ending that kicked off the whole series, of course. A twist which doesn't make a ton of logical sense since it involves Frisk somehow escaping from their own possessed body in a physical form, but I digress. Nothing particularly negative to say about this one. The series just gets so much better from here that the first episode kinda has to be this low.
You're not supposed to be here!
Determination is where Glitchtale's plot really kicks off. Kara coming back and forcing Flowey and Sans to team up and save Frisk is a pretty neat sight to see, and leaving it off on a cliffhanger was a new thing for the series at the time. However, this technically could still fall into the category of fight scene isn't as emotionally charged as most of the fight scenes in Glitchtale, so I could maybe see the argument that this is a few spots too high, but I don't know, man. I just really like this fight scene. Probably mostly for the music. The first song in the series made by series composer Nick the Shield, by the way. I especially like this part.
So much death.
The very first prequel animatic also happens to be my least favorite. Don't get me wrong, I think this backstory is cool and all, but my main problem with the Black Beast is a problem that pops up in a few other places in Glitchtale too, which is that it kinda takes the idea of show don't tell a little too far at times. Like, it sometimes just shows things happening without really explaining how or sometimes why it can or does happen. The fact that there's no dialogue here expounds the problem even further, leaving the viewer to have to figure out some important lore details through not always obvious subtext, such as that dark orange and not pink is technically the fear trait, and that the Bête Noire simply took on Amber's form instead of being Amber herself in any way, I think? Still, most of these problems don't really come in until the very end of the short, so we're still left with an intriguing first look into the prequel era and a fittingly gut-wrenching backstory for Season 2's Big Bad.
What the f was that?
The first two prequel animatics were actually pretty hard for me to choose which one I liked better, but in the end I decided that I liked Kashi slightly more. I don't think the bit of story that we get here is quite as interesting as the Black Beast, admittedly, but the thing that put it over the edge for me is that the questions it presents are actually supposed to be questions still at this point. The main one being this thing, which I'm pretty sure is called Miasma and is likely going to be a pretty big player in the prequel season, but other than that, we still don't know anything about it, really. But the reason that it's still this low is because it doesn't really endear me to Kashi at all, at least not adult Kashi. Like, we see him a lot as a kid, but not a ton as an adult. And like, we know his motives now, sure, but nothing really about his character. Still, I am excited to learn more about him in the future.
I have crippling depression.
My least favorite episode in Season 2 is, perhaps predictably, Game Over Part 1. It's not like this is the only episode in Season 2 that doesn't have a fight scene or anything. but it kind of is the only one to not have any sort of big moment. Well, I guess it sort of does in the form of the admittedly amazing intro, but that kind of feels disconnected from the rest of the episode. Like, when I think Game Over Part 1, that scene isn't immediately what comes to mind, you know? And also, I still don't understand why Kara was able to go back in time at all and why he couldn't have done it again in the new timeline, but that's besides the point. Lots of really good character work done here in this episode, but it ultimately doesn't feel like it moves the plot forward all that much. Although we do get introduced to Rave, and properly introduced to Ronan, who quickly started to become my favorite character after this. Love that guy.
I will not let you hurt my friend!
I was pleasantly surprised when the Hates Origins Part 1 animatic came out and not only explained what happened at the end of Season 2's final battle, but also turned out to be the origin of Glitchtale's entire magic system. I totally wasn't ever expecting to get that, so that is really cool to see. And on top of that, it kind of explains some things about how hate worked even back in Season 1, like how it always ends up in the person who's the target of the hate and not the origin of it. Honestly, my least favorite thing about this is that it came out after the Season 2 finale, but that's going to affect my ranking of Hope a lot more than my ranking of this. Really, the only reason that it's this low is that there's only so much you can do with a dialogue-less, fight scene-less animatic.
You killed my daughter!
The first 2 episodes of Season 2 basically are a 2-part introduction to the season's plot, and in my opinion, My Sunshine is ever so slightly the lesser of the 2. This was the first episode in the whole series not to have a fight scene, instead leaving its big moment to be when Jessica realizes that Asgore murdered her daughter. Another moment that gives me chills every time, by the way. This was a great way to set the stage for the much more character-focused direction that the series would take from this point on. The rest of the episode is pretty typical introductory stuff. Not bad by any means, but nothing to write home about, really.
Oh, that is some dust.
Deciding between My Sunshine and its direct follow-up basically came down to comparing what I've been calling their big moments. And in that regard, the Bête Noire reveal at the end of Dust absolutely takes the cake. The rest of the episode is pretty good too, taking on the melancholic vibe that would be there for pretty much the entire rest of the season, but that ending is what really stands out. The reveal of Betty as the villain, even if a little predictable, is handled expertly. And then right after that, the episode has the absolute gall to kill off Sans in the second episode of the season. Yeah, I know he's not technically dead, but for the purpose of the narrative, he's functionally dead, so shut up. Again, the only thing that's keeping it below so many other episodes is the lack of a fight scene, but what a way to kick off the season's plot.
Continue?
In a lot of ways, Season 1's finale set the stage for everything Glitchtale was about to become in Season 2. I mean, obviously that's how plots work, but in terms of just straight up vibes, Continue is kind of just a microcosm of how the entirety of Season 2 was going to feel. You've of course got the big fight scene, which is filled with emotional complexity, but also an untimely death/sacrifice kind of, and even the ultimately happy ending despite the odds. I've watched a lot of reaction videos for the whole series, and this is usually the first episode that really gets people emotionally, and understandably so. I feel like I haven't said a whole lot of concrete stuff about what actually happens in the episode, but I don't know, it's just really solid, that's all there is to it.
Me and my friends are gonna go flying together into the forever and beautiful sky.
From the relatively little we've seen of the prequel characters so far, Cody was already my favorite member of the Wizard Council even before his Origins animatic came out, so I was already bound to like it. And yeah, it's good stuff. Unlike the Kashi animatic, this actually does show off a good bit of who Cody is as a person, as well as his core motivation. It even shows off his family and how traitless are forced to live in this society. What's this? dialogue in my Glitchtale Origins animatic? It can't be. And yet it is. See, it's not that hard. Plus, it leaves us with the very intriguing mystery of whether Stell actually tried to assassinate the king, and if so, why? Again, can't wait to see more of this guy in the future.
We still have hope!
Oh boy. Just keep in mind, as I talk about this one, how high up it is and how much good stuff I had to say about the things that I ranked below it. Really, everything I don't like about Hope as a season finale comes down to one thing. Betty is already dead. Like, I get it. Hate was kind of behind the scenes the whole time, ever since season 1 even, and Kara even has a personal connection to it. But Betty was functionally the antagonist for the entire rest of the season, and she was a really effective antagonist. In the end, we never even got a proper Kara versus Betty fight that the entire season seemed to be building up to. Hate is a huge threat, sure, but Betty was menacing, sadistic, while Hate just has this blank, emotionless expression. Until suddenly it doesn't? Which was really weird before we got the context from the Hate Origins video, and I don't mind it as much now that we do have that context, but I think it was still kind of a weird way to end the final fight of the season at the time. And the whole side plot with Ronan and Rave and the Hate blob feels kind of pointless in the grand scheme of things, besides giving us more backstory for Ronan, who continues to be my favorite character. All of this comes together to make the previous episode almost feel like the season finale in some ways to me, and this one feels more like a wrap-up episode. Like I said in the intro, that statement is in no way meant to discount all of the work that went into making the episode. I'm talking purely in terms of the script here. But all that being said, the fight scenes are still really cool, especially getting to see Hyperdeath Azrael again, and the character work is still really well done, and ultimately, I really like all the endings that the characters get, so it's pretty decent overall.
Do it.
Allow me to tell you about some complex feelings. Feelings like, why the heck does the nullifier exist? Calm down, it's not that big of a deal. Do or Die is a really good episode with one big plot contrivance thing that has always just been really weird to me, but I'm not going to ramble on about it here, because to be honest, even if it wasn't there, I don't think this episode would move at all. Season 2 kicks into full gear in a big way this episode, dealing expertly with the aftermath of Sansa's death, although I do think Jessica's change of heart was a tiny bit rushed, and having the season's first of many amazing action scenes. And murder. Just lots and lots of murder. Good old Glitchtale.
I've looked into the reset button. The science is impossible.
Not many episodes would dare to put their one and only action set piece at the very beginning, but Love Part 1 pulls it off pretty decently. And man, what a fight. Always cool to see Undyne in action, especially as the Undying. But what about the rest of the episode? Well, the rest of the episode basically boils down to Frisk being a butt to literally everyone. And it's done really effectively. Like, to be honest, I didn't really retain much of what happened in this series after my first time watching it, but I remembered at least Flowey wasn't such a coward. I remembered that. Oh, and also this episode has by far the funniest moment in the series for me.
No.
Gets me every time.
What can men do against such reckless hate?
Whew boy, now we're getting to the real good stuff. Well, most of Hate is your pretty standard Glitchtale fare. Sans wakes up, Gaster's traumatized, Kara isolates the corrupted Azrael from Betty, Ronan continues to be my favorite character, and Undyne finally gets over her trauma. Okay, a lot of that stuff actually wasn't all that standard, and most of it was actually pretty cool, but I just want to talk about the Asgore and Toriel versus Betty fight scene. Man, just getting to see Asgore and Toriel teaming up, getting to see Asgore finally let loose and show off his full power, Asgore recognizing Agate in Betty's fighting style. And of course, that heartbreaking ending, all set to the brilliant soundtrack Dreamers United by Nyx the Shield. I didn't talk about this in the section on Hope because that was running a little long, but the way that Asgore and Toriel's relationship progresses throughout Season 2 is one of the most underrated aspects of the season to me. It just feels like such a natural progression from where it was left off in Undertale, where their relationship was completely broken, and only through all of this trauma, a lot of which involves their son, are they finally able to become friends again. Such good storytelling there.
Who else will I have ice cream with?
We've talked about a few episodes of Glitchtale so far that have big moments that aren't fight scenes, but there's only one episode in the show so far that has a fight scene where that fight scene is not the episode's big moment. What I mean is, when you think My Promise, you probably don't first think of that fight scene in the city, although that is a really cool scene, and the reasons that corrupted Azrael has to hate both of his parents are very well thought out. No, you think of the ending. It's hard to call it a sacrifice, since Frisk had no other choice, and we know that he had already been willing to quit the game since way back at the end of Season 1, but still, this scene is just so well executed. To make you actually feel for Frisk after all the crap he'd pulled the previous 2 episodes, yeah, that's impressive. And it's a really cool way to bring Kara back into the story too. And that's not even mentioning the soundtrack, My Last Charade by Nevin Dove, which, by the way, wasn't even originally composed for this scene and yet fits so well. That's like one of my favorite little Glitchtale fun facts. I don't know why, I just think it's neat. This episode is very much deserving of the number 5 spot.
This'll teach you to compliment my work and give me my first positive reinforcement from a parent-aged adult ever!
Gaster is easily one of the best characters in Season 2, so a short dedicated to his past was bound to be the best of the prequel shorts. But this high up? Is this way too high on this list because it's the only one so far that's fully voiced? Well, consciously, no, but subconsciously it's hard to tell because the voice acting in it ranges from pretty good to fantastic. But there are 2 main reasons that I am justifying putting a prequel short this high. One is that it retroactively makes Gaster's final fight with Betty in Animosity even more emotionally complex than it already was, which is saying something. It shows that in that moment of absolute awesome butt kickery, he's becoming something he never wanted to become. The second reason is that of all the origin shorts, this one is the one that gets me most excited for the prequel season. So, is this too high? Well, it's my list, and I say no.
Welcome to my new show, How to Shoot Stuff That You Hate. Here's an example.
I know that some people are going to think that this episode is too low. Too low at number 3? Yeah, that's just how good Animosity is. This episode basically consists of 3 giant set pieces that are fairly disconnected from each other, which might be a tiny part of why it's not higher, but not much because all of them are awesome. All of them have a sense of finality to them that, like I said in the Hope section, kind of makes this feel like the true season finale in some ways. The giant blob is destroyed, we get Azrael back, and Betty dies. Honestly, that last one is probably a big part of the reason that this isn't at number 2, but I already talked about that back in the Hope section, so I won't dwell on it too much here. Undyne and Rave get their big moments. Ronan continues to be my favorite character. We finally get to hear I've Come This Far by Rush Garcia. The Skeletons versus Betty fight might be the single most emotionally charged fight scene in the whole series, and if I keep talking about specific things that make this episode so great, I'll be rambling for way longer than I need to for the purposes of this video, so I'll just let the number 3 spot speak for itself.
You see the quotations I'm making with my hands? It means I don't forgive you.
You'd think that the death that gets me the hardest would be one of an Undertale character since I've spent more time with them through playing the game, but nope. I'm getting ahead of myself. Game Over Part 2 is pretty awesome. There really is a lot that happens this episode, including giving more of a spotlight to Papyrus and Metaton, which the series doesn't do very often. Rave gets some backstory, Ronan continues to be my favorite character, and the giant blob is terrifying. But the best thing about this episode for me is the progression of the relationship between Gaster and Jessica leading up to her death. Of course Cammy would make their relationship start to heal the slightest bit before putting them in a situation where one of them has to sacrifice themselves for the other and both of them are willing to do it and they end up fighting over who gets to die. Of course she would! I'd had a feeling even before watching this episode for the first time that either Jessica or Gaster would die, so this scene of back and forth between them was just toying with me the entire time. And the ultimate resolution of it is just so perfect. What an all-around fantastic episode.
And coming in at number 1, it's...
You know what's a fun thing that all my top 3 have in common? They're the 3 episodes in this series that have soundtracks by Rush Garcia in them. So, of course, my number 1 is the only one that has 2 of them. And lots of other reasons, of course. Oh, where do I even start with Love Part 2? Well, I guess I'll start at the end because, my gosh, the entire second half of this episode is a roller coaster of emotions that, in my opinion, is completely unmatched by anything else in the series. Other episodes may come close, but none quite reach this one for me. This is definitely helped by Blood and Bone and Glimpse of Light, the 2 aforementioned Rush Garcia soundtracks, which are absolutely incredible, as well as the 2 Nyx the Shield tracks here are pretty good too. But it's not just these final fights that make this episode so good. I haven't been talking much about the, dialogue-only scenes throughout the season because I haven't had a ton to say about them, but Love Part 2 has some of the best. The Gaster and Papyrus scene, for one, has the best line in all of Glitchtale. Someday we will all just be a memory for some people. I just want that memory to be a good one. I think about that a lot. Papyrus, you wise, wise man, you. And not only that, but the Azrael and Flowey scene, which is easily my favorite one-on-one dialogue scene in the series. Not only because of what it means for Azrael's character, but because of how it ties into the whole time travel thing later. It's all just so freaking clever. Absolutely, without question, my favorite episode in all of Glitchtale. And there you have it. Every single episode of Glitchtale ranked from my least favorite to my favorite. I would love to hear all your thoughts and your rankings in the comments, so please let me know what you think. I also want to announce that I finally finished setting up my Patreon, so you can join any of the tiers to get videos early and get a shout out at the end of every video. The link for that is in the description. I also have a Discord server that I would like to be more active in going forward. The link for that is also in the description. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video, or whichever video of mine you choose to watch next. Bye!
Darkness, darkness.
You must have seen a lot of darkness.
Darkness.
I love you, my brother.